I stood at the back of that crowd and watched a man I could not stand buy my farm for $11,400, and I never opened my mouth to stop him. My name is Della Marsh. The 80 acres I sold that morning had been in my husband's family since before the road out front was paved, and everybody on those steps knew it, and not one of them could look at me. They thought they were watching a woman lose everything she had. What they were actually watching, though nobody there knew it, including the man with his hand up, was a plan. This is the story of how I let the county sell my own land out from under me on purpose, why the developer who bought it never owned a single inch of it, and how he ended up paying my taxes for 2 years and thanking the clerk on his way out the door. You should know what the 80 acres were before you decide what they were worth. Hayfield mostly, good bottom ground along Pike Creek, with a woodlot on the slope and a house my husband Ray was born in. We ran cattle on it for 31 years, and then just hay, and after Ray died it was hay and me and a neighbor boy with a baler. It was not a rich place. It made enough to keep itself and keep me, and the taxes on it ran about $900 a year, which I paid every November from the hay money, in cash, at the counter, the same as Ray's mother had. That is what a farm is. It is not an asset. It is a thing that pays for itself as long as nobody decides it should be something else. Garrett Vance bought the ridge above me the spring after Ray died. He bought it in pieces, from families who were tired, and he was patient about it and polite, and he always paid a little more than the ground was worth. People liked him at first. I did not dislike him either, not then. He would stand up on that ridge in the evening with a map under his arm and look down over the valley the way a man looks at a house he already has the keys to. He had the whole slope inside of 2 years. And then he had everything on that ridge except the 80 acres of creek bottom at the foot of it, which is the only part of a valley that is worth anything, and which was mine. Vance petitioned the county to rezone the ridge commercial, and he won, and the day he won my life changed, though it took me until November to see it. That fall my tax notice came, and it was not $900. It was $11,400. The assessor had looked at my hayfield sitting at the foot of a commercially zoned ridge, and had valued my ground not for the hay it grew, but for the shopping center it could theoretically hold someday. That is legal, in a lot of places. Highest and best use, they call it. It also meant the county was now charging me, every single year, more money than the farm made, for the crime of being next to a man with a plan. Nobody had to run me off. The bill would do it. Vance came to the porch 3 times that winter, and he was never once rude to me, which I said. The first time he offered to buy the 80 acres outright, at a fair price for hayfield and a joke of a price for what he intended. The second time he offered to lend me the tax money himself, at a rate I will not repeat, secured by the farm, which is not a loan. It is a longer way of buying it. The third time he brought a paper that would only be an option, he said, just an option, so I could relax and it would only cost him a little now and me everything later. 3 visits, 3 papers, 3 places to sign my name. I told him no on the porch every time, and every time he smiled and said, "November comes around every year, Mrs. Marsh." And he was right. It does. So in November I did not pay my taxes. I want to be plain about this because for 2 years the whole county said that poor Della Marsh had lost her head after Ray died and quit opening her mail. I opened it. I read every word of it. I took that $11,400 bill and I put it in a kitchen drawer with the checkbook, and I left it there, and I did it on purpose, with my eyes open, knowing exactly what the county was required to do next. I could have paid it once by selling the woodlot, which is the exact piece Vance wanted, and then I would have had $900 worth of farm and no woodlot, and the same bill again next November. That is not a choice. That is a slower kind of no. So I made the only move on that whole board that did not need my signature on anything. I spent that whole winter at the library table with the county statutes and a legal pad and Ray's reading glasses, which I did not need but wore anyway. Here is what I learned. When you do not pay your property taxes, the county does not take your farm. The county sells the debt. It puts your parcel up at the annual tax sale and somebody bids what you owe, and the county gets its money that day and washes its hands of you. But the man who bids does not get a deed that morning. He gets a certificate of purchase. And attached to that certificate, written into the law of nearly every state in this country, is a thing called the right of redemption. It is the owner's right, my right, for a set period after the sale, to pay that man back his money plus statutory interest and cancel the whole thing like it never happened. In my county, the redemption period was 2 years. The interest was 12%. I read that sentence maybe 40 times. Now understand what that meant sitting at that library table. If I let the farm go to tax sale, some stranger would hand the county my $11,400, and I would owe that stranger $11,400 plus 12% for 2 years, and I would have 2 years to find it. That is a loan. It is a 2-year loan at 12% from a lender who cannot foreclose, cannot call it early, cannot add a fee, cannot change one word of the terms, and does not get to decide whether to give it to me, because the statute already decided. Vance had offered me worse on my own porch. And the same week I worked that out, I filed the other thing, the quiet thing, the piece nobody in the story ever thought to watch. I appealed my assessment. Farm ground is supposed to be valued as farm ground by its actual use, and mine was in hay, and had been in hay since before Vance was born. The appeal would take about 2 years to be heard. 2 years. So would the redemption. I did not need to win my farm back. I needed to run 2 clocks side by side and let them finish together. The sale was on a Tuesday in March. I did not have to go. I went. I stood at the back in Ray's coat, and I watched Garrett Vance raise one gloved hand and buy the debt on my 80 acres for $11,400. And I watched him shake the auctioneer's hand, and I watched a man from the paper take his picture on the steps. He did not gloat. He looked for me in that crowd, and he found me, and he took his hat off to me, and I have thought about that gesture more than any other thing in this whole story. Because he meant it kindly. He believed, standing there, that he had just quietly and legally and finally bought the bottom of his valley from a stubborn old woman who had made him wait 4 years for it. He believed he was done. He did not buy my farm. I need you to hear the size of that. What Garrett Vance carried down those steps that morning was a certificate of purchase, and a certificate of purchase is not a deed and has never been a deed. It is a receipt. It is the county's written promise that a man paid somebody else's tax bill and is entitled to be paid back, with interest if the owner redeems, and entitled to apply for a deed only if she does not. He had not bought 80 acres. He had bought my debt and a 2-year wait. Every hour of those 2 years, the land was still mine, the house was still mine, the hay was still mine, and the only thing he owned was a piece of paper that would either turn into money or turn into nothing, depending on what I did before the clock ran out. He had paid my taxes for me, and he had made himself, without ever once understanding it, my lender. Here is where a patient man got greedy, and it cost him everything. Before a certificate holder can turn his receipt into a deed, the law makes him do one thing. He has to notify the owner. He has to tell me, in writing, that my redemption period is running out, and here is what I owe, and here is the date after which the land is gone. That notice is the whole protection. Vance's people sent it. They sent it certified 3 times, exactly like the statute says. They sent it to the tenant house at the end of the North Lane, an address in Ray's dead mother's name on a mailbox that had not held a letter since 1998, a house you can see from my kitchen window with a tree growing through the roof of it. They did not send one single letter to the farmhouse with a light on in it, 400 yards away, where the woman on the certificate had eaten her supper every night for 51 years. Every letter came back marked unclaimed. He put those green cards in a folder like they were trophies. His lawyer stood up in that hearing and made the argument I knew was coming, and it is not a stupid argument. He said, the statute lists 3 certified letters, and we sent 3 certified letters, and the statute does not require that she read them. And that is where the whole thing came apart, because notice is not a chore you complete. Notice is a constitutional flaw, and the Supreme Court of the United States has said, in plain words, that when the government moves to take a person's property and the notice it mailed comes back unclaimed, whoever is taking that property must take additional reasonable steps to actually reach the owner, if any are practicable. Any are practicable. Vance had stood on my porch 3 times. He had my phone number in his own file. He had a title company, a surveyor, and a lawyer who all knew exactly which house I slept in, and there was a woman with a light on 400 yards from the empty box he kept mailing. Those cards did not prove he tried. Every one of them proved he knew, and mailed it there anyway. And then, 11 days later, the other clock finished. 2 years after I filed it, in a room with 4 people in it and no reporter at all, the board heard my assessment appeal and rolled my valuation back to agricultural use, where it had been every year since Ray's grandfather, because my 80 acres grew hay and had never grown anything else, and what a man on a ridge imagines for your ground is not what your ground is. My tax bill for those years was never $11,400. It was about $900, the way it always had been, which means the enormous delinquency that justified selling my farm on the courthouse steps had been mostly a phantom the whole time, and you cannot sell a woman's land for a tax she did not owe. The sale was void from the day it happened. The rezoning Vance built to squeeze me is the exact thing that created the bill, and the bill is the exact thing that gave me the appeal, and the appeal is the thing that erased the sale. He constructed every piece of it himself. So he had 2 roads to my farm, and he had closed them both with his own hands. The tax deed died on the notice because the man who wanted my land had made sure I would never hear from him. And the sale underneath it died on the assessment because the tax he paid was never owed. The judge did not lecture him. She did not have to. She voided the tax deed application, she set aside the sale, She confirmed my redemption, and she sent everybody home in about 9 minutes. I signed nothing that day either, which I noticed. Vance was not in the room. His lawyer stood up alone and took it, and then he packed his folder with the 3 green cards in it and he carried it out, and I sat there in Ray's coat and let the room empty out before I stood up, because my legs would not do it yet. The county cut Garrett Vance a check. That is the part I still think about. When a tax sale is set aside, the buyer does not lose his money, he gets it back, with the statutory interest, because he did nothing wrong by bidding, and the law is not in the business of punishing him for the county's mistake. So he got his $11,400 back plus 2 years at 12%, which is a little under $14,000, on money he spent trying to take my home. He made about $2,600. That is what the ridge cost him, and the plat maps, and the 4 years of waiting, and 3 trips to my porch with his hat in his hand. Around $2,600, at exactly the interest rate the statute pays a lender, because that is all he ever was in this story, from the second he raised his hand on those steps. He was my lender. He paid my taxes for 2 years at a rate I could live with, and he had no idea he was doing it, and the whole time he thought he was buying my farm, he was quietly financing the woman who was keeping it. So here is my question for you. A man rezoned a ridge, and the county turned my hayfield into a shopping center on paper, and a bill I could never pay came every November, and when I would not sign, he stood on the courthouse steps and bought my whole life for the price of a used truck, and took his hat off to me. Was he a thief? Or was he just a patient man who never once thought to knock on the lit house before he mailed a letter to the dark one? I know what I think. Tell me what you think. And people ask me why I did not fight it in November, why I let it get that far, why I let strangers watch my farm sold on his steps. Because a tax sale is the only door in that courthouse that opens without your signature. Mine swung both ways. If you want the next one, a man who put his brother's name on a deed just to get the loan approved, and the brother who decided 10 years later that made it half his, subscribe, and I will tell you how that one ended too. These are the Vendetta Tapes. Nobody here breaks the law. They just finally read it.